This morning, the world watched a new chapter in a tense and fast-moving diplomatic standoff unfold. Iran has reportedly floated a proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the straiteted choke point through which a significant portion of the world's seaborne oil passes, on the condition that the United States pause or hold off on nuclear negotiations. The offer, intended or not, has become a touchstone in a larger confrontation that now mixes economic pressure, military action, and the fragile politics of a region already on edge. The White House reacted quickly and sharply. In a pointed social media post, President Trump framed Iran's move as the act of a nation in disarray, writing in all caps, Iran has just informed US that they are in a state of collapse. They want used to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. Those words underscore how high the stakes have become. To the administered, flashed, Iran's gesture, whether a negotiated ploy or a sign of genuine weakness, looks like an attempt to gain leverage while economic pressure tightens. The broader question now is whether Washington will accept any deal that pauses one form of confrontation while leaving other dangers unresolved. Adding to the chorus of concern, Senator Marco Rubio weighed in with a warning framed not only as a geopolitical critique, but as a long-term security argument. He said, "I hope that in the aftermath of this conflict, the full world's eyes have been opened to the threat Iran poses. They want to do with the nuclear weapon like they do oil. They want to hold the world hostage, to do whatever they want. It's unacceptable." Senator Rubio's words reflect a hardline school of thought in Washington that any arrangement with Iran must be constructed so tightly and verifiably that Tehran can never again race toward a nuclear weapon. That position will complicate any diplomacy that treats the Quran. T offers a bargaining chip rather than a pathway to durable resolution. Behind the public statements, new data paints a picture of mounting economic pressure. A maritime tracking firm monitoring ship movements and storage capacity reports dramatic declines in shipments and quickly narrowing auctions for Iran's oil exports. According to the numbers circulating within trading circles, daily tanker loadings have dipped sharply from roughly 1.85 million barrels a day last month to about 567,000 barrels a day now. Those figures, if sustained, mean Iran's export revenues are shrinking at a rate that could force quick, painful adjustments to production and storage. Analysts warn that Iran could run out of export-grade storage capacity in as little as 12 days, or perhaps as much as 22 days, depending on how fast tankers can be routed and how much oil remains on shore. Faced with full tanks and fewer buyers, producers are left with few choices: shuttle crude into strategic reserves, find costly and covert workarounds, or simply shut wells. Shutting in production is not a simple flick of a switch. Once a well is shut, the technical and financial cost to restart it can be significant, and long periods of inactivity can mean permanent loss of output. One widely circulated forecast holds that production could be cut by as much as 1.5 million barrels a day by mid-May if current trends continue. Those are not abstract numbers. They translate into lost revenue for the Iranian state, layoffs across oil service and downstream sectors, and shortages of fuel and refined products inside the country. In short, the blockade of ports and the squeeze on shipments could quickly translate into economic hardships for ordinary Iranians, higher prices for fuel and food, fewer jobs, and rising public anger. That possibility appears to be on the minds of Tehran's own leaders. Iran's Supreme National Security Council reportedly convened to discuss the mounting economic pressure and the Sochi. Our consequences unfolding at home. Officials, according to accounts circulating through diplomatic channels, have expressed concern that rising prices, growing unemployment, and damage to key industries, from petrochemicals to steel, could become the tinder for renewed mass protests. The economic angle is important because it reframes what might otherwise seem like a narrow strategic dispute into something more sweeping, a contest over not just nuclear constraints or shipping lanes, but the very resilience of Iran's political order. If economic hardship becomes widespread and sustained, Tehran could face internal fractures that ripple outward in unpredictable ways. At the same time, the military dimension remains raw. Across Israel's northern border, the Israeli Defense Forces say they have escalated strikes in southern Lebanon, targeting sites linked to Hezbollah. The IDF has said it struck more than 50 locations, singling out weapons storage, manufacturing facilities, and even ground complexes. Hezbollah, for its part, has continued to fire rockets and send drones into Israeli territory. That tit-for-tat raises the risk of a wider conflagration on the Lebanese front, and any widening of the battlefield could complicate US-led efforts to pressure Tehran into concessions. Those cross-border strikes and counterstrikes are more than localized conflict. They are another variable in the larger negotiation over Iran's regional posture. For the United States, the calculus includes whether to keep economic pressure in place long enough to bring Iranian leaders to the table on terms Washington finds acceptable, or to engage in more direct military action to blunt what it sees as immediate threats. As one analyst put it, the central question is whether the blockade will be sustained until Iran's economy collapses, or whether US policymakers will pivot toward kinetic measures. There are no easy answers. Sustained economic pressure can be effective, but at the significant costs, humanitarian impact inside Iran, ripple effects on global oil markets, and the risk that Tehran will respond asymmetrically through irregular proxies or cyber operations. Military strikes may offer short-term deterrence, but they raise the prospect of escalation and regional coalition tensions. Both paths carry geopolitical consequences that would be felt well beyond the region. What's clear is that the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea, remains central to this contest. A small slice of geography, it sits astride a large share of the world's seaborne oil. Even the perception of instability in those waters drives up insurance costs for tankers, prompts rerouting that adds time and expense and sends jitters through global markets. The idea that Iran could open or close access to that strait has been a strategic lever for decades. The latest back and forth has revived those fears in market and diplomatic circles. On the humanitarian and domestic front inside Iran, the consequences of tightened exports are tangible and immediate. Shortages of gasoline and refined products are often the first signal that sanctions and blockades are biting. For average citizens, that can mean long lines at pumps, rationing, and higher prices for basic goods as transport and production costs rise. Economic pain tends to concentrate on the middle and working classes, and history shows that sustained visible hardship can be the spark for broader social unrest. Internationally, the situation creates diplomatic headaches for countries that depend on Gulf oil and that must balance interests, maintaining energy supplies, avoiding full-scale regional war, and standing by commitments to non-proliferation and allies. Some partners may push for de-escalation and negotiation, others will back more pressure. That fragmentation complicates any collective strategy and leaves the door open for opportunistic maneuvers by local actors. If Tehran is indeed trying to buy time by offering to open the Hormuz Strait while engaging in other maneuvers, the question for Washington and its allies becomes one of verification and sequencing. Can any deal be structured so that access to shipping is restored without giving Iran space to accelerate a nuclear program? Can mechanisms be put in place to make compliance visible and enforceable? Senator Rubio's caution that any agreement must definitively prevent them from sprinting towards a nuclear weapon at any point captures the skepticism many policymakers bring to such proposals. The difficulty is translating that skepticism into a workable, enforceable set of measures that reduces risk rather than simply postponing it. For markets, the near term is one of heightened volatility. Traders will watch shipment figures, storage levels, and any interruptions to flows through the Hormuz corridor. Shipping firms will reassess routes and insurance. National Oil Co., mentees, and private traders will scramble to adjust contracts and logistics, and central banks and finance ministries, particularly in energy-dependent countries, will track price movements and inflationary pressures that could result from sustained disruption. For regional actors, the logic of deterrence and power projection is already reshaping choices. Israel's actions in Lebanon are aimed at degrading the capacity of a militant proxy. Hezbollah's rockets and drones are both retaliation and signaling. Iran's own options range from limited military demonstrations to more clandestine efforts to bypass financial choke points. Each move reinforces the other side's sense of urgency, and too often that urgency shortens decision-making timelines in ways that increase the chance of miscalculation. At the human level, the calculus is painful. A country's oil revenue feeds budgets for health, education, and public services. When that revenue declines, the burden of adjustment often falls on. Citizens who had little role in the political decisions that precipitated the crisis. That economic squeeze is why Tehran's leaders are reportedly meeting urgently, weighing domestic stability against geopolitical advantage. It also explains why international observers worry that economic pain could fuel a new round of public protests. Looking ahead, the coming days and weeks will be decisive. Will Iran move to formalize the offer on the table and allow independent verification of access to the Strait of Hormuz? Will the United States view that gesture as sufficient to open a broader dialogue? Or will it demand guarantees and irreversible steps that Tehran may reject? Will the economic pressure continue to bite? And if so, will it reshape internal Iranian politics in a way that alters Tehran's posture? And perhaps most worrying, can regional eruptions, cross-border strikes, drone attacks, proxy escalations be contained before they spawn a much larger conflict? There are potential paths forward. Diplomacy, backed by clear verification and gradual easing tied to concrete actions, could buy breathing room and reduce immediate risks. International mediation could create multilateral monitoring arrangements for shipping lanes and nuclear facilities. Humanitarian safeguards could be negotiated to reduce civilian suffering during any period of sustained economic pressure. But all of those options require political will, creative architecture, and, crucially, trust that is in short supply. For now, the situation remains fluid. The words from the president and from Senator Rubio frame two competing logics, one that seeks to capitalize on perceived Iranian weakness and one that insists any concession must be blocked from creating future danger. Between those poles lies a dangerous and complicated arena of ships and pipelines, underground facilities, and parliamentary debates, protesters and soldiers. As this story continues to unfold, the world watches not only for the next headline, but for the small technical shifts that presage larger outcomes. Tanker movements, storage levels, the functioning of refineries, the pattern of drone and rocket fire along borders, and the tone of private diplomatic traffic. Each of these will offer clues about whether the confrontation bends toward negotiated containment or toward a wider and more destructive series of pressures. In the end, the question is whether statesmanship can outpace the momentum of pressure and retaliation. Can rivals translate brinkmanship into a durable settlement, or will each measured step be followed by another escalation, drawing more actors into an increasingly combustible environment? Whatever path unfolds, the human costs, economic, political, and social, will be real. The choices made now will echo for years, shaping not only the security architecture of the Middle East, but also the global economy's sense of stability. The coming hours and days, then, are critical for negotiators, for soldiers on the ground, for citizens standing in line for fuel, and for leaders who must decide whether to hold the line of pressure or to build a bridge toward a different kind of resolution.